So, I'm here with my guest,
You're not the host.
Doctor. So what's on the agenda for Still Blue Water today?
Well, I was thinking about the fact that one of my favorite movies is The Wizard of Oz, and one of your favorite movies is 2001. And a while back, it kind of occurred to me that they have a lot in common with each other, I think. They're both they're kind of archetypal stories. They're both kind of like hero journey stories. And in some ways, though, I think one is like the flip side of the other. They're both, there's some amount of magic. Each one, there's like a certain amount of magic. There's like a mystery involved. In The Wizard of Oz, it's like, the Wizard of Oz is like this mysterious great figure who could cause, untold great things to happen. And in the 2001, it's like this monolith. Would you say that that's kind of equivalent? There's this monolith out there in space, and they're going towards it, thinking that maybe it can give you some answers.
Some of the parallels match up one for one during the course of the films, like learning about the wizard and reaching the wizard at the end of The Wizard of Oz, and learning about the monolith and reaching the monolith at the end of 2001. That's like one for one, but then the other parallels are in reverse. So I think that there's two sets of parallels. The ones that match in the same progression, and then the ones that are completely the opposite.
Yeah, some are like flip sides. There's a lot of irony, because thinking about The Wizard of Oz, sometimes I wonder, why does she want to go back to Kansas? Because in some ways, the Emerald City is like a much more interesting place.
That's what I was thinking about last night.
It's like a very, it's a colorful, interesting place. I mean, bad things happen, but good things happen too. And Kansas is just kind of black and white. So why does she want to go back there?
Why would she want to go home? It's a big mystery to me, because Kansas was boring. It was dirty. There were dirty animals all over the place. She fell into the big mud. It's black and white.
I have an answer for that. Possible answer.
Her relatives are nice, but she didn't have anybody her age to play with. She was isolated.
I think the answer to that is, and it kind of goes along with the parallels, that maybe Kansas, maybe after her learning experience, I mean, this whole journey is a journey of maturity. It's a coming of age story.
Right. Learning
how to use your own power. Maybe once she gets back to Kansas, it won't be such a bland place anymore. She will, because of her journey and what she learned, she will, who knows what's in store for her in her life. Maybe she'll go to university, and
maybe she'll leave the farm.
The colorful things in her life.
Yeah.
Whereas in 2001, I think the irony there is that it portrayed space as being not so romantic. I mean, there were a lot of things about space that were not that interesting.
Most of the second portion of that film revolved around extreme human isolation. In order to conserve food and water, the two astronaut characters in 2001 were only allowed to be awake at the same time so often. It's funny how the film is a progression toward greater and greater and greater and greater forms of isolation, until finally, when David Bowman, astronaut, turns into the Star Child, I mean, there isn't anybody else anymore. It's completely alone.
So who's the Wicked Witch? I mean, I think of like the Wicked Witch as being Hal, because towards the end, when the Wicked Witch dissolves, to me that reminds me of when Dave was disconnecting Hal.
Yeah. And I agree with you that Hal is the Wicked Witch, because the whole character of Hal was based on deceit, passive-aggressive wickedness, purely by accident. You know, who chooses to be wicked, including the Wicked Witch? You know, maybe she had a really horrible childhood. You know?
Right.
And she just turned out to be a bitch because...
Well, and Hal, you know, somebody programmed him, really.
Right, and the same thing with Hal. You know, nobody chooses to be wicked. It's just that he was trapped. He didn't have enough counsel. He didn't have enough information. He didn't have enough compassion and love to go to someone and say, "Help! I need help. The only way that I can get out of this situation is by killing innocent people. Help me." You know, but he didn't have the skills.
Yeah.
And that's the same way with the Wicked Witch, you know. I mean, she was so lost in her power trip and whatever that she couldn't reach out for help anymore, because she locked herself in to her castle and with the monkeys and stuff, you know, and she surrounded herself with people who couldn't help her. The USS Discovery is clearly the Tin Man with the heart, because the centrifuge was the heart that provided the nourishment, the food, the oxygen. The Lion, the Tin Man, and the Scarecrow are the portions of Dorothy's character that she needed to assimilate.
Oh, so these are really metaphors for her own heart and her own courage and her own smarts. It's kind of like learning to get to know those parts of yourself.
But the thing that's really spooky about 2001 is the Star Child is so isolated at the end. Like, why wouldn't spiritual and alien triumph result in...
Well, to me, the Star Child is like that little bit of optimism, where like I was saying, Dorothy, you don't know what's going to happen to her in the future. That's like the Star Child is like, I think, to me, it means like a source of optimism for man, whereas, you know, the space thing didn't really do it. I mean, I don't think optimism necessarily comes from going out into space per se.
Wow, that's really, really true. Yeah.
You know, and
I
so
agree with that.
the Star Child is kind of like going back home again. To me, it's like the film is kind of like saying that journeying into space by itself is not really the answer. We kind of have to go back home again. And like Glenda, you know, another parallel I think is Glenda. The sight of Glenda coming down to me is like that same kind of psychedelia part in 2001. You know, where you go through the monolith and you like transform from where you spent most of the story back to somewhere else, or, you know, back home.
Yeah. Isn't that ironic? Like, the people went all the way, you know, millions and millions and millions of miles to the monolith, and then the Star Child ends up floating over Earth. Kind of ironic. A long journey going in the wrong direction is required in order for humans to grow. That's the great paradox of the human condition. It seems like so much trouble and so much heartache. It's like, why does it have to be such an ordeal? But it has to be. It's just a fact that has to be accepted. If Glenda told Dorothy, well, you have all the power inside of you right now, the movie would be 5 minutes long, and then
Right.
you know what I mean? And then if the astronauts were like, well, you know, we don't really need to bother with the, you know, 5-year-long mission to Jupiter. Things have to happen. You can't just learn something. That's why when people who love, like, let's say some well-meaning relative tells another loved one, well, believe in yourself. It doesn't work. The person won't understand that unless they go through some horrible experience to learn to believe in themselves.